In this second tutorial, we're going to look at a few ways that we can modify and adjust the controls and parameters available on the modules in Salvation. So what I've got here, I've got a really basic setup. I've got a rectangle here, and it's going through to this final window at the end that we can see here on the right. And I've also, just for this tutorial, I've put a scale module in there, so we can see that I can change the size, and also a translation module, a position module. Now, I'm not going to go too deeply into these modules in this particular tutorial, but we're going to use part of the functions of them. It's just useful for you to know what they're doing there. Okay, so let's say, as we've seen there, we can use these on-screen controls to adjust components of our modules, the properties of our modules. Now, some of them you'll see, like the scale, that will keep letting me go, and we can actually see the value next to the control there when I'm adjusting it. But then there'll be others which will only let you go certain amounts. So the first thing I think we should look at is how to adjust the range of controls. So when I right click on any control, say for instance this scale parameter, so get an idea of the scale that we've got there. When I right click on it, we see a set of controls where we can set values, we can set range limits, but actually there's another little window that's hidden away. If you hold control and then right click on the control, you get this one here called control properties. So let's left click on there to open that up. So this is a really useful little window. We can see here that we can actually create a minimum range and a maximum range for this module, and whether that range is enforced or not. So when the button for range is turned red, the range that we specify here is the range that's used. You can also change things like the sensitivity and the smoothness of the control. So the sensitivity is how quickly the control will respond to your movement. If you have it on a very low value, it will take quite a long time to progress through values. If you have it on a high value, it's going to go really quickly. Smoothness determines the smoothness of that interpolation. You can also give your controls a label or a name as well. So I'm going to adjust this one, and then what I can do is I can show you how we reposition text. So at the moment this one is called S. I'm going to change it to scale, because actually that's what it's doing. So we press enter in the box. Now when you enter values in these little boxes, it's worth pressing enter once you've typed in or adjusted your value. Sometimes they don't always take. And then we press OK to apply those changes. Now, we can't see the rest of scale at the moment because it's been shrunken down. So the first thing we want to do is we want to move this maybe below that controller so that we can actually see the text properly. Now, if I put my mouse to the edge of the module, you can see that we can increase the size of the module, but it doesn't work the same for the controls, because you can see that when I left click, it's just adjusting the control. So again, if we hold that control button down and then we left click, we can actually drag that control to wherever we want, and in certain cases we can actually increase or decrease the size or coverage area of that control. Now if I control and left click on my text, and just next to it I'm going to keep the control button held, click my left button and drag it over, and then I'm going to double click in there and just enter that name correctly. There we go. You'll notice that text, if I can hold control and left drag, the text will follow the control that it's assigned to, but I can separately, if I do control and left click on the text, I can separately move the text. So that can be quite handy if you want to sort of get your alignments nicely and make a good looking layout. You can also, if you see that when I control and left click on the control, it becomes slightly blued out compared to that one there. If I keep the control button held, I can actually use the arrow keys on my keyboard to position things as well. So that can help if you want to be really, really accurate. And what you can actually do, if you do come out with a layout that you really like, you can actually save this layout. So if you right click on the module and you choose save to alternate skin, we can give this a name. I'm going to call it Aaron's 01. Let's press enter. And then the next time I go onto the module, if I right click and I choose load alternate skin, the one that I've just made will show in there as one of my others. So if I go to that other one, for instance, we can see that's one of the pre-supplied layouts for this module. And then if we go back to the one that I've just made, there we go, we've got exactly what we had there. So you can change your ranges, you can change the positioning and the layout. Some of these modules do have more ports or parameters than are originally exposed as well. So if you right click on the module, you'll see an entry for show port. So there we can actually see that this one has a total of 5 ports. We're only seeing 2 at the moment, but we've got modulation input ports there. And the same with show parameter. We've got a few extra parameters there that don't come on here by default. So you can sort of modify these modules to as you need them and then save them to your library. Now let me just show you one further trick for sizing and scaling, which I find really quite handy, and it relates specifically to the fader controllers. So I'm just going to add a controller. What we'll do, I'll do another tutorial more specifically about the different types of controller. I'm just going to get my fader up. Okay, yeah, so don't worry if I've just jumped through that this time. We're going to do a proper controllers tutorial. So sometimes, so this is a really good example actually. This module goes from a value of 0 to 1. And we can tell that if I bring up my inspector again. So remember, the inspector is the one that lets us look at values or control signals. If I hold it over the output port, we can see the value of the module there. And as I increase my fader, we can see that's gone all the way up to 1 there. So for a start, as I mentioned just now, let's say I want to increase the range. So again, that's Control, right click on the fader, and go to Control Properties. In my output maximum, I'm going to change that to 10. Pressing Enter, and then press Apply at the bottom, and then I'm going to close that. Then now, hopefully, when we move the fader, there we go, we can see it's gone up to 10 now. Now, having a greater range is all very well, but we've actually, because it's in the same area as the original range, it's a little harder to actually find that precise value. So instinctively, what you might think is, okay, well, I'll just grab the module and I'll stretch this out, and like so, and then maybe that port's in the way. So if I control and drag the fader, but it's still a small fader. So we can extend the size of the fader. So this one's a little tricky to get the first time, but once you've found it, it's very easy to find. So I'm going to hold the control button. Now I'm going to move my pointer. I'm going to move it in so that it turns into the hand. Now if I move it slightly off again, and now if I hold my left mouse button, you see it turns into the arrows, and it's selected the fader, and so now I can actually extend the range of that fader, and I can even do that on the height as well if I want to make a wider fader. And in fact, what I'm going to do, just to make my module a little bit nicer, I'm going to put that one there. Then maybe let's bring him up a little bit. Bring that port up there. Like so. And then just for good measure, I'm going to just bring those down very slightly. And then let's save that as a new skin. So save to alternate skin. I'm going to call this one Big Fader. Cool. So now we've still just got that 0 to 10 range, but we've got much more precision on there because of the extra space that we've got in there. So that's just a really useful one to be aware of. Okay, so that was a really quick tutorial on just sort of adjusting parameters, adjusting ranges on controls, adjusting sizes of controls and layouts of controls, and being able to save and recall those layouts in later projects.